Welcome back to the Sad Boy Cinema Club podcast. My name is Austin. His name is A&J. Join us as you try to find purpose and hope in America's true pastime, watching some good old-fashioned movies. You see the title, you see the thumbnail. We're talking about Double Trouble today. Directed by John Paragon, written by Kurt Warmer, Charles Osborne, and starring Peter and David Paul, Troy Donahue, and James Doohan. And the guy behind the camera, the cinematographer, is Richard McCulloch. This is AJ's movie. And I was a little apprehensive at the end of last week's episode because this is a To Be Tuesday classic, as AJ would put it. And for those who are still new to us and maybe didn't see all the episodes, we are 1 for 2 in To Be hits so far, in my opinion. We watched Shapeshifter, which in my opinion is atrocious. And then we watched Alchemist's Cookbook, which is pretty decent. So I was apprehensive going in, but why don't you explain to us why you picked this movie in particular?
I love Tubi. I love their business plan. The AI gambling ads kind of get old, especially after if you're watching a longer movie, you get them every freaking however often the ad breaks are. That's my only complaint when it comes to Tubi because honestly, Tubi's got some straight fire. Like it's free. They've got good movies. They've got old movies. They've got new movies. There's something for everybody on Tubi. And I'm not sponsored by them, and we probably should. So, Tubi, if you ever stumble across us, hit your boy up. I'm cheap. I like free swag, so that's about all I can say about Tubi. But yeah, so Double Trouble, I had never seen it, never heard of it. It was just like God put this movie in my brain one night, and was just like, look up Double Trouble, my young one, and just saw the cover, thought it looked like two buff Theo Vaughns, and just was like, all right, this is our movie. I honestly, I like to pick movies that I know you would probably never watch on your own. I just enjoy bringing that level of chaos to this. So that is why and how I pick my movies. So that's a little look into the inside of how this works. I loved it. It was a fun film. I went into it not knowing anything about it. I usually will watch a trailer or read a synopsis or look at reviews, but I feel like that can sometimes skew your opinion of the movie. If you read a review or if you watch a trailer, sometimes movies are shit and they just put every exciting or every funny thing in their trailer, and then you're watching an hour and 30 minutes of something you've already seen 2 minutes in. I picked it because brass tacks, I like to cause you a little bit of heart palpitations. Just like when we work together, I like to do things. I like to work harder, not smarter. And so this is my own little way of doing that to us in this, since we don't work together anymore. So what did you have any expectations going into this movie?
Not about the movie particularly, just more skepticism on my part about the Tubi selections. Because again, we discussed it in last week's episode, or maybe 2 weeks ago now, that we like Tubi for two very different reasons, and you're 1 for 2 in my opinion on the selections. So I was really apprehensive about that. I was hoping to not get another stinker. So nothing about the movie itself. I looked at the poster, and it definitely does look like two buff Theo Vaughns. I was glad to learn that those were actually twins and not just a mirrored version of the same character. So I thought that was kind of cool. Other than that, nothing on my end.
Okay, well, without further ado, let's break down Double Trouble. The opening act shows us and introduces us to the brothers. And they couldn't be, it's like the odd couple. They are very much two distinct, different people. We meet David, Jade, and he's an aggressive LA cop who wears crop top sweatshirts to crime scenes. Honestly, his uniform made me think maybe he was an undercover worker. I didn't think that he would be like just a regular 9 to 5 detective with the LA Police Department, but he definitely dresses just like a mom. Like when you think of like mom jeans, he's wearing super tight, light colored jeans, a little crop top. He's got his hair teased out. Like he definitely feels that vibe of an 80s, 90s mom. And I found that so hilarious, but especially because he's so, just looking at him physically, he is so freaking jacked. And unlike Bruce Lee from Enter the Dragon, I am sure that the Paul twins definitely juiced, because there's no way they look like that. We hear a phone call come in for a cat burglary in progress, And actually, that is when we meet Peter, David's brother. And Peter, when he calls to report his crimes, which is funny. And he'll spray paint the scene with a cat's face, and he will request Detective David Jade to come to the scene. So he knows that that's his brother, and he just loves fucking with him. And as somebody who loves to fuck with people, chef's kiss. He puts on a masterclass in this movie. You know, the status quo shatters once Peter eventually partakes in a cat burglary of a diamond exchange. He obtains this thing that looks just kind of like a debit card, and I thought that was what it was for a moment. And I guess in a roundabout way it is, but he pulls off the perfect crime and gets away after some roughhouse fighting on the roof between brothers. And there's a funny one liner in this movie where David pulls the gun on Peter, and he's like, What's wrong? Are you having a bad day?" And he's like, "I wasn't until I saw you." And he was like, "Maybe I'll go to jail now because I'm crazy after I kill you." And just again, these two actors have just such phenomenal chemistry that I really think this helps this movie not be a total stinker.
One thing that I really did like about the movie is that when we are in this room collecting all the diamonds, he has this headset that makes it look like he's RoboCop. I thought that was pretty cool. And these two together, the only thing that I could think of, and I don't know the actors, I've literally never seen them outside of this at all. The only thing that I could think of is the Von Erich family. It would be like the Von Erichs if they were cops and robbers. That's the only thing I could think about.
Yeah, I could see that. And I was trying, after I watched this movie, trying to think, okay, well, who could you put in this to make a sequel? And obviously, you want to do twins, or at least brothers that look alike. And the only ones that I could think of were like, I think the Da Vinci twin, is it the Da Vinci twins?
Da Vinci, yeah.
Yeah, those guys make me think that but they couldn't pull this off. That would be one of those movies that you find at the bottom of a dollar store bin, because I think that would be absolute trash. Peter gets caught eventually after he pulls off this huge robbery, especially after he's donned his RoboCop glasses, and he notices or he gets arrested, and then he is able to get his way released from jail because he's now aware that he has stolen from the wrong people, so he needs police protection. And he has his lawyer pitch this idea, and somehow it goes to the FBI, and then it gets back to the police chief. Which, if you watch this movie, the police chief looks just like my uncle, which was our boss for a long time. And when he came on the screen, I was like, "Holy shit, that looks like Joe."
It did look like Joe. I didn't think about that until you just said it right now, but it does look like Joe.
And that's the only thing I could see when he was on screen was just my uncle. And so I'm gonna have to tell him to make sure he watches this. I know he's a fan of our account and a fan of our podcast, so I have to make sure he definitely watches this one. Reluctantly, David agrees after he goes to quit, and the police chief tells him, "You can't be serious. Don't do this." David walks back in, grabs his badge off the chief's desk, and decides to do this so then he can put his brother back in prison where he feels he belongs. They are also teamed up with a FBI handler, Whitney, and they give Whitney so much shit throughout this movie. Like, it's very funny how each of them has their own disdain for Whitney. There's a couple jokes. The one that comes to mind right now is when the brothers go to Peter's house so he can change clothes. There's like this jeep full of these hot co-eds, and they're all excited to see Peter. And Peter's like, "Hey, this is my brother David, and this is our sister Whitney." And I was just like, "God dang it, that's okay. You got me there."
They bully him because he's the worst FBI agent there ever was. Prior to getting to their house, they have to stop at the restroom. And David tells Whitney to go into the restroom with Peter to make sure that he doesn't do anything dumb. They both end up at the urinal, and Peter says that he's pee shy, so he goes into the stall, and he's just like having small talk with Whitney about the dumbest shit. And then he manages to escape out the window. Luckily, David is down below, knowing that Peter's probably gonna skip out, and tells him to go back up the railing and go back and like pretend like nothing happened. I do not know any federal agents. Don't know anybody that works for the CIA or FBI. Otherwise, I would probably be in a different line of work. I feel like you have to have some semblance of intelligence and wherewithal and just straight up common sense. Do not take your eyes off of the perp that you just struck a deal with. That seems pretty straightforward. And then Whitney is just the dumbest person alive. I understand that he moves the plot forward a little bit and he's kind of the punching bag. But if I'm supposed to believe that you're an FBI agent, don't let that happen.
I like at the end of that when David catches Peter and sends him back into the bathroom. He steps in the toilet and then he comes out and Whitney looks at his feet and they're wet and Peter goes, "Yeah, no matter how much you shake it, you always get a little pee on you." And I was just like, "Fuck!" Like this is definitely the vibe of like a cool uncle takes you to see this movie. It is the vibe I get from this. So the jokes, the one-liners, they all fit perfectly in this movie, and I think it really does well moving the story along, and just really the actors I think that they picked for this movie phenomenal. I don't really think there's an actor that is bad at his role in this film. I think they got the casting right to a T. And that's really going to do it for Act One. So we're getting ready to move on to Act Two, which is the most chaotic part of this film. It's where the narrative structure completely gives way and it goes to a B movie spectacle. The brothers are first forced to work together, which leads to endless sibling bickery and Jim Bro behavior. The scene when they're at Peter's house and there is the Peter's talking about his muscles and how he loves to work out and he wants to be buff, but he doesn't like to work out, so he has a tens unit and he shocks Whitney, which again he's the punching bag here. And in after that, we see David on a weight bench eating creatine or some sort of powdery substance, and he just sits there and he's eating it by the handful. And they're like, "Oh, Whitney says something to him, and Peter says, 'Oh, don't mess with him. He's got roid rage.'" So it's like they're very tongue in cheek about like the probably the criticism that they receive about their bodies, about it being the easy way out. Because I'm sure, like I said, I don't know these two actors, but I'm sure they were on the juice. Like there's no way you get that buff and look like that.
Well, Peter says in like probably the next scene or like in the next 4 or 5 lines of dialogue that he doesn't do steroids. Hey pal, I hate to break it to you, you absolutely do. The human form cannot reach that potential without a little help. Yeah, you will just never convince me. I've watched wrestling, professional wrestling for way too long to believe that people can naturally get there. It just won't happen. So, Dave and Peter, sorry guys, you're both on the roids.
This movie, again, talking about the cast for a moment, they have some really, really solid cameos in this movie. Uh, the biggest probably being David Carradine, R.I.P., uh, being Mr. C, which is Peter's prison mentor. And this was actually James Doohan, who is the police chief. This is his first role in like 20 years since he appeared on Star Trek. So I thought that was kind of cool and a weird way to get your feet back. But I bet this set was fun as hell to work on. Then we go back. They've survived the first assassination attempt of Peter. They just go around now and just trying to track down what's going on, who this crime syndicate is. And this is also where we really meet the villains of the movie, and we are introduced to the crime syndicate, and they're ruthless. Like this boss is very unassuming. He's very small in stature, but he definitely has weasel qualities about himself. He's very slimy, very easy to dislike. And the one scene where he's got his henchmen standing around him in the office, and he talks to the first henchman that is also the head of security, and he fires him because there was a breach in their security, and it's unacceptable. And by doing so, he has the hitman Bob, who also starts the movie off with a kill, shoots the chief of security, and then they just drag his body off screen. And I think this just adds to like the spectacle of being a B movie. It doesn't take itself too seriously. And I think that's a really charming quality of this movie. This part of the movie, we also begin to connect the webs of who's involved in this criminal enterprise and for what reason. They slowly, reveal that this is being orchestrated by a construction worker in his company, as well as city councilman. And I believe it's not too far into the second act where they tail the councilman into the gentleman's club, or not gentleman's club. It's a health spa. They go in there, and you have your again, you have such huge juxtaposition because it's mostly old, like bloated men, and then you see David walk in there, and he's jacked, and so he's sitting in a hot tub. Then you see Peter walk in, but before we get to that part, I thought it was funny because David knows Peter is a loose cannon, so he locked him to his steering wheel of his car before they went into this health spa that's members only. And so we see David go in, and then a few moments later, we see Peter go in, and they're talking to the front desk receptionist, and they tell him when Peter comes by, he's like, "Did I just walk through here?" And I thought that was, again, cheap humor, but it fucking works with me. Fart jokes and cheap humor always are going to get a chuckle out of me. All right, so the duo observes the councilman and the construction boss having a heated discussion in a sauna. The councilman seems like he's rather on edge, so he storms out of there and then goes to a tanning salon or a tanning bed section of this health club. And then we see the twins follow him in there, and they just begin to fuck with him for about a good solid 3 minutes. They rip off his little glasses so he doesn't burn his retinas and tie the tanning bed after he won't talk. And then he gets out of there and he's sunburnt, and they keep saying, "Well, do you think that was enough to push him over the edge?" Is what Peter asked David. And he's like, "No, not yet. He needs a little more." So they go and they steal his clothes from his locker. And then, did you see the hangman drawn on the inside of the door? I thought that was a nice little juvenile touch. So they stole his suits and cut him up and everything. And he's like, "All right, do you think he's out on the edge now?" And it's like, "No, he needs a little bit more." So they leave. And when David is leaving the locker room, he stops at the front desk, flips out his badge, and says, "Hey, there might be a bomb. There's been a bomb threat. We need to go check out the councilman's car. Which car is it?" With a license, in the cop or in the secretary gives him the ID number for the license plate as well as the car, what make and model it is. They go out there, and we don't see what they do at first, but then we see the councilman walk out there, and he's hiding behind cars, trying not to be seen. And then he eventually makes his way over to his car to find the car flipped upside down, and he starts to like lose it because it's a BMW. And then the David and Peter say, "All right, now he's ours." So they eventually kind of get him to flip ever so slightly, but this syndicate is good at what they do. So they immediately take the councilman out by having the hitman Bob drive and gun him down, run him over in the car. It was weird how quickly the ambulance got there because the twins see it happen, and the ambulance gets there quickly, like almost instantaneously after they called it in about they needed an ambulance. And then they're trying to chase down Bob in the car after he ran over the councilman, and the twins are now boxed in between an ambulance and another police car. So they've got no chance of catching him. So after Bob gets away and the syndicate has successfully taken out their leaky councilman, the twins somehow track down Tito, which is the new head of security, after the previous one failed and got shot. And Tito lives in this high rise up on the penthouse. We see David walk in first, and he goes in and he notices that there is a bag of just trash, and it's just like two grocery bags full of food waste. And he tries to get to the penthouse through the elevator, and he rides with this old, miserable white woman who just seems like she hates everybody and thinks everybody's beneath her. They get on the elevator together, and she looks over and sniffs, and she then is talking to David, and she's like, "Yeah, you can't get to the penthouse. You have to go back down to the lobby, and you have to get the security guard, and he'll call up to Tito or to the penthouse, and then he will take you up there. So the stealth option is now out the window. He can't get to the penthouse. Even though I thought it was funny when the old lady gets off the elevator, David then like just mashes P on the elevator, and like it was like, okay, she was probably lying, and it's like, no, she wasn't. That's just how this building works. So then we also see Peter come in a little later after David gets downstairs, goes back to the security guard, takes him upstairs, and then some more hijinks happen. Peter comes up and he broke off David's steering wheel because he was handcuffed to it. He breaks it off, and that comes in handy as he's able to save David's life. And throughout this movie, they each go back and forth on saving each other's lives. And just, honestly, though, I think Peter probably saves David's life more than David saves Peter's, because I can't really think off the top of my head of many instances where Peter is saved by David. But this is one time when David, again, is about to get dropped because he totally misses this guy with a gun. Peter hits him on the head with the steering wheel, again, leaning into that B movie persona. They eventually fight their way through and get to where Tito is. And I don't know if every bad guy has a lair that has climbing equipment just about, because not only did they have one, but they had two different rappelling lines for, I guess, quick escape, which is smart on their behalf because they're able to get the hell out of the building. But I don't really think of too many crime movies where they had the guys escape via grappling rope. But eventually Tito gets away, and then another of the henchmen that's up there tries to get away. The brothers catch him, and he doesn't get away. But at one point, this is also where we see David grab a satellite dish and carry it like it's the heaviest thing he's ever carried, which I'm sure it wasn't light, but it definitely couldn't have been that heavy, because after he throws it off to hit Tito's car, Tito just kind of shoves it off the hood. And I get it's a little different to shove something off a hood versus picking it up to carry it over there, but it seemed like they were really trying to play on David's, Herculean strength, but that one missed for me.
Just because those are show muscles. Those aren't real muscles.
So Tito gets away, despite the frisbeed satellite dish, and he is now heading back towards the boss. They're trying to continue with their plan, and the plan all along is there is so many diamond. They're not banks. I don't know what storage vaults, I guess, would be a better term from, but that's the point of what this crime syndicate is looking for. They're trying to find the card that Peter stole in the very beginning when he broke into the vault, because it works like an ATM card. You can put it into a machine in any of these vaults, and the vaults would open up, and you could just go in there and clean out the diamonds. The whole point that this syndicate is trying to do is they're trying to get that key, because it is going to be an extremely difficult task to rob this certain vault without that key card. Like you're talking, there's going to be security, there's going to be, the vault locks you in, and at one point, and this is really when our duo figures out why the construction crew or the construction boss is involved. Peter goes to jail, or back to prison, after as an impersonation of his brother David, uses his badge and everything, and he goes into the prison, and he meets with a Mr. C, played by David Carradine, who is his mentor. But I also think they kind of made it like a little bit of a romance. Did you get those vibes when they were communicating with each other through the window?
I did not.
Oh, maybe that's just me.
I thought playful on behalf of Peter, but not romantic in any way.
Mr. C was Peter's mentor, and so he tells him that's what this is all about. They are trying to get this card, because without the card, you're fucked. You can't steal these diamonds. So now Peter knows he has what they need, and that's gonna really set the mood for the exciting conclusion of this movie. Act 3, we see our heroes finally figure out who the bad guy is, what their goal is, and how Now they've got to come up with a plan to stop it. The crime syndicate has this timeline, and we see the boss talking to the CEO of the construction company, and he's telling him, "Hey, look, no one's gonna know that this card is missing for 8 hours. We have an 8 hour window. At 7 hours, we have to make the decision to go without this card. Now that's going to make this job harder. It's going to make it more difficult, more risky. So hopefully we don't get to that. That's kind of where the bad guys are. Our good guys, the Jade brothers, they get in a fight. And this is one of the things that I noticed watching this movie, and it's around the 46-minute mark in this film when the brothers are fighting and they're rolling down the steps and they're just beating the shit out of each other all across town, and they get in the back of a car and all this. Two things came to mind. One, I noticed that when they're rolling down the steps, David, who's usually wearing the crop top and jeans, is still wearing that, but in one frame, he has now a gray shirt underneath his crop top Raiders sweatshirt. So I thought it was hilarious, and like you said about show muscles, they use stunt doubles for that scene for sure, because obviously David's not going to just put on a gray undershirt for 1/10 of the movie, like, you know what I mean? So that was kind of funny. I also wonder the gag, the running joke in Family Guy where Peter and the chicken fight and they're just beating the shit out of each other all across town. When these two brothers are fighting and they're, again, like I said, fighting all across town, that is the only thing I could think of. I just was like, Jesus Christ, I wonder if Seth MacFarlane took that from this movie, or if that was the inspiration, because they absolutely are just beating the shit out of each other.
I mean, I think Seth MacFarlane's bag is pretty deep, but I don't think that it would be this one. There has to be another example of something like this. There's no way that Double Trouble is responsible for one of Family Guy's most famous gags. No shot.
That's my genie wish. If I ever, get the opportunity to interview Seth MacFarlane, I almost called him Seth Rogen, Seth MacFarlane, I'm gonna ask him. I'm gonna be like, "Are you familiar with the 1992 classic Double Trouble? And is that where you got the Peter versus the chicken fighting?" So again, if the universe, I'm putting it out there, these are answers I need to know. So the brothers are done beating the shit out of each other. They go and they're starving after that fight. So they go to eat, and they go to like this burger joint. It's a nondescript, actually the building is kind of cool. It looks like a giant hamburger, which I thought, why don't we have more of those? Like McDonald's used to have a soul, and now it's like a corporate, box store office. So that's another tangent I could go on as my fast food whimsy that's long gone. But David is just chowing down on this burger, and Peter's like, "How can you eat that? It's full of carcinogens." And then David tells him, "You can get it on the side." So I thought that was funny. Then they go to this restaurant, and that's when they see Peter and David are in the restaurant, and they're both wearing suits, so they look identical. And you can definitely tell David is much more uncomfortable being dressed up. He's more of your working man, every man. So he's very uncomfortable in a suit. And David tells Peter he hates it because he feels like they're in school because they always dress the same. Peter then tells David, "Well, don't worry. After all this is said and done, you can go find a mud pit and roll around in it." So I thought that was funny. That, again, just this film, if anything, the theming of it could just be the juxtaposition between these two characters, because they could not be any more different from each other. Now that we know exactly what the plan is, we see the Jade brothers kind of formulate what they're going to do. David ends up going to the construction site that this Joe Kent owns, the CEO of the construction site. He's trying to look around, and he gets the jump on, or the henchmen get the jump on him and capture him. And we're right at like the 7th hour, like right at that deadline when the syndicate has said, like, "Okay, listen, at the 7th hour, if we don't do this, we have to do that. We have to do a pivot." Well, keep in mind, these guys are identical twins. they grab David thinking it's the cat burglar because there's a video of him where he is doing this little motion and he flips off the camera, which again, Star-Lord does that. So I wonder if Gunn got it from this.
I just having a real hard time thinking that two of the most iconic people in film and television are just like so deep in their bag that they're like, oh, you know what would be funny if we did a double trouble reference in our movie.
You know what? Who knows? Again, putting it out there in the universe. So they've got this printout of Peter, who they don't know is a twin, flipping the camera off, and they know he has the card. They think the day is won. They have the twin, so they're beating the shit out of him, trying to get him to confess. You know, where's the card? Where's the card? Where's the card? And he's like, my twin has it. My twin has it. And then the big bad guy's like, I refuse to believe that there is another human being that looks exactly like you. And then at about that time, Peter actually walks in wearing a suit, and the bad guy says, "Well, I owe you an apology because there are two of you." Peter pulls the gun because the villain has a gun held now to David's head, and Peter, being a good brother, he refuses. You know, the bad guy's like, "Hey, drop the gun or I'll kill him." Peter drops the gun. David tells him, "No, just shoot him, kill him." Kind of accepting his fate because he doesn't want, you know, I think David kind of knows as a cop in that situation, like, hey, if I'm a hostage and they're going, or if there's a hostage situation and they pull a gun, like, you need to kill the the bad guy with the gun, obviously, and not kind of give in to what they want, because then now they in theory could have two hostages. Uh, Peter doesn't have that instinct, so he lowers his gun, and when the bad guys are going to secure him so they can tie up both brothers, they reach their hand in the pocket of his suit coat where he's carrying that little diamond debit card. So they bad guys now are extremely happy, and the head boss tells he starts relegating different tasks. Like, he gives one guy, he tells him, go to the airport, get it ready, make sure our plane's ready. He tells the CEO, Joe Kent, to make sure his construction crew is ready because they're able to do this the easy way now. So then they tell him, the CEO tells the bad guy leader, he's like, hey, my guys are always ready. We're good to go. Let's do this. There is one last henchman to receive an order, and it's Bob, the guy who's shown he has no qualms with killing, and the boss tells him, all right, well, kind of take care of these guys. This leads up to where Whitney finally gets to earn his keep as an FBI agent, I think, as we see the two brothers go out into the yard where they're going to be executed, in theory, on the construction site. The brothers are able to disarm two guys that are, in theory, going to kill him, Bob and the other guy. That fat henchman that doesn't have a name, that just has the mustache and ponytail, I thought he was going to be terrible at karate or whatever kind of fighting they were doing, but he had surprisingly good moves for a bigger guy. So the twins defeat these two henchmen and get the guns. Bob takes off running, so David is now chasing him. He's going to kill him. Except David, honestly, he kind of fucking sucks as a cop too, because he's chasing Bob, he runs out of this tunnel, and then Bob just jumps down behind him, and he's getting ready. He disarms David, and David's laying on the ground, getting ready to get shot. And then we just see Bob's chest explode. Special Agent Whitney has come to the rescue. I don't know how he knew they were there. If it just, as a means to move the script along, or whatever it was. But Whitney pops up out of the cut, blasts Bob, kills him, and then the brothers are like, all right, listen, we know their plan. They're going to go rob this thing. So Whitney's going to run off and tell his rest of his FBI agents, hey, this is what they're going to do. And we see Whitney eat shit as he's running away, as he trips on a barrel. And you just see the two brothers just being like, oh, God, Whitney fucking sucks. Whitney, I guess, eventually makes it to the FBI. and tells them, hey, this is where these bad guys are going. It needs to be locked down. So then we see this over the top, way over dramatic escalation from the cops. They fly in helicopters, they bring in SWAT teams, they lock down the building, and we see that this movie is a comedy movie. So all these cops are standing around out there, and it's like, okay, well, there's no way in hell these bad guys are gonna get out of this vault. Like, there's no way. We've got it locked down. The FBI agent in charge, he's just full of himself, and very much I think he views this as, hey, this is my way to get ahead. Like, I can get a promotion out of this if we pull this off. So there's members of the media come up, and they're trying to get some more of the story, and they get the message back to the head FBI agent, and he's like, well, is it national media? Who are the broadcasters who are here? And they're like, oh, it's just local media. And he's like, yeah, make them wait. They bring a coffee cup, and it says, uh, your best world's best boss or some shit like that. And the agent's drinking out of it, and he's just feeling smug and all full of himself. Well, then it cuts to this construction crew. They are riding the rail because the bad guys, this construction crew, the reason that they teamed up with this crime syndicate is they have access because they're building the city's metro rail line. So they have access to these tunnels that run right underneath I think it's the IDE, International Diamond Exchange. They get underneath there, the bad guys do, and they have these blast caps, and they're prepared to do a huge explosion and get in that way with the help of the diamond debit card that they have. Well, they prime the bombs, stuff the holes, get ready, and they do the explosion. And then it cuts back to after we see it is successful, and it cuts back and it shows the FBI agent holding his coffee cup, and he starts to shake his hand. He assumes that it's his nerves. He's had too much caffeine, so he calls over another junior agent and says, I'm switching to decaf. Which, again, one-liners in this movie are plentiful, and I think I would be very hard pressed to find my one favorite hard one-liner. The bad guys, they're able to get up into the vault. Moment of truth, they put the debit card in, opens up. Then they go in there and just clean that exchange out. They've got these little shop bags, and they've got these little crystal backpacks that you can see as they fill up, and it's just going down row by row, cleaning out all the diamonds. The twins arrive on the scene. They quickly get into the tunnel, and they're too late. The robbery's already happened. The CEO, Joe Kent, and the rest of his construction crew, the twins are able to catch up to him. They escape through this like utility door, I believe it was, and the last of the bad guys is up at the top of the utility doors as the two barbarian brothers are running, getting ready to get up the steps. They close them, make their getaway. Now the bad guys have their diamonds. The FBI has been embarrassed, and we see a big celebration in an airport hangar where the syndicate has met. They're popping bottles. They're very joyous. But the crew is definitely smaller. There's like 6 people in there, and we quickly whittle that down to 1 because the weasel in charge poisoned the alcohol that they pop bottles with. So 4 of them immediately die. And then he's like, oh shit, Joe Kent's still alive because I forgot he didn't drink. We see him shoot him in the head. He leaves. Twins show up after the head bad guy's airplane pulls up. They fight. They eventually get the upper hand. They arrest the syndicate's boss. The day is saved, and the movie comes to an end. What did you love about this movie?
Not a lot, and I'll get into why here in a minute. But my absolute favorite part of this movie was such a throwaway. It was when David arrives at the construction site, throws on a hard hat, passes another construction worker, and just yells, Miller time, and walks on. That was my favorite bit of the whole movie.
That's what I'm saying. This movie has such good one-liners. Is that so? That was your favorite one?
Yeah,
My favorite one.
eons ahead of everything else.
See, I don't know. My favorite one is when they look at the tens unit and Peter says, "I wonder if this can make your dick muscles bigger." That was mine,
That
I
was a good
guess.
one. That was funny. Yeah,
um, what I loved about this movie, I loved the one-liners. I loved the chemistry that the two brothers have. I thought it really kind of saved this movie. Um, I think if you would have put this as any other duo, it would be very hard to kind of watch. I don't think that if the chemistry wasn't there, I don't think it would be nearly as good. All right, so that's what we love. What did you hate?
most of the rest of it, because I was particularly quiet during this review for a couple of reasons. One, I didn't want to taint the experience and like potentially sway anybody who hasn't seen Double Trouble. But if you've made it this far in, I will definitely do that now. It combines two of my least favorite genres of all time, that being cop movies and heist movies. I don't I don't fuck with cop movies for a lot of reasons. I'm ACAB over here. I also think this was 30 years ago. And when we talk about cinema as a whole, as an industry, it's been around in full force since like the 1930s. So, in roughly 100 years, 70 years at that point, there can only be so many things done. And for cop movies in particular, everything has been done. There is not a new cop story that has been told in the last 50 years. It's all been done. So that bothers me. Don't like any cop movies, and this did not tread or create a new path here. Heist movies are all the same. You won't convince me otherwise. I know that the Oceans franchise is super popular and everybody loves these movies. If I've seen one heist movie, I've seen them all, and I just didn't get anything out of this movie at all. So outside of the fun one-liners and the fact that there is very good chemistry with a lot of these actors, and the actors are ranging from pretty good to fine, everything else was just pretty bad for me.
Well, Mr. Stick in the Mud, I wouldn't change a thing. I loved it. I thought that it was just a fun watch. I think is you've said before it's one of those there are movies where you have to kind of like just turn your brain off and just watch it. I could see that being said about this movie. I think, in fact, actually, when I was watching it, my youngest Callie and I were actually watched it together. And I was before we watched it, I said, "All right, Callie, I've got to watch this movie for the podcast. It's probably going to be bad." When the credits rolled, she said, "Dad, I thought that was supposed to be a bad movie." So I'm out here changing minds and winning hearts.
I would have changed two things. I don't think it would have fixed the movie, in my opinion, but I definitely would have changed two things. One is I would have, when the congressman is being chased out and trying to like find his clothes or whatever, I would have shown rather the two guys flip over his car personally so we can prove it's not just show muscles, it's actual real muscles. And then I would have, toward the end, we see Peter ride off into the sunset with a bunch of diamonds. I would have made Peter teeter with the idea of coming toward the light. He was at the very least effective during his very limited time as a police officer. And then you could be a buddy cop duo with your brother. That seems like a nice way to end this movie. And I don't know if this is part of a series. I don't know if there's a sequel or a trilogy out there for this movie. But if it's going to be a one off, give us a little hope. And they didn't do that either, actually. And something else that I definitely would have changed, the double cross is the most predictable thing of all time in a heist movie. I knew the second that the big bad syndicate man came on screen and he said, I'm working with these people. I'm like, oh, well, you're going to double cross him then. And we see him at like the 11-minute mark. So for the next 110 minutes, or not 110 minutes, that's a little too much. For the next, what is it at that point? For the next 70 minutes,
Yeah.
I have to sit there and go, I know where this is going. And then when it happens, there's no payoff for me. I go, well, yeah, it's a heist movie. You're gonna have to double cross somebody. The first time a heist movie doesn't double cross somebody, I'll be impressed then. But again, heist movies have been done. If I've seen one, I've seen them all. What is that movie called? Red Notice, the one with The Rock and
Yeah.
Ryan Reynolds, and okay, that is indistinguishable to me from any of the Ocean's movies. It's the same movie.
Have you seen the movie where they have to rob a Brinks truck in a hurricane? That's got to be something new for you.
The only exception to a heist movie that I both think is different from the genre and good is The Town, and that's in like its own pantheon. Like
That's a
it
fucking
doesn't
good
belong
movie.
in just yeah, it doesn't belong in good heist movies. It just belongs in the good movies category.
So I will say, at one point, you talked about how you would have loved to have seen Peter kind of go back and forth and on whether he was going to have a clean life or not. There is a throwaway conversation that Peter and David have when they're in the cars, or when they're in David. Also, David's car is all beat to fucking hell. Like that. There's a joke that Peter makes actually, where he's like, "What's in this? What is this engine? A tractor?" Like, I was just like, "Oh,
Well, he
damn!"
only makes $20,000 a year, so
That's what I was going
you
to
got to make
say.
do.
He asked Peter asked David. He's like, "Well, what? I'm pretty good at this cop stuff. What do you make a year?" And he's like, 23,000. He's like, per month, per week. He's like, per year. And he's like, and you let people shoot at you for that much money? And then he takes the one line a little bit further, and he's like, what do brain surgeons make? So it's just like he's got that idea of, okay, well, if I go clean, this is what I need to make, and if I'm not going to make that, I'm not gonna change my ways. For this movie, honestly, I wouldn't change anything. Well, let me put a caveat to that. I would love to see this movie as a 4K release, and I don't know why. I would love to see it cleaned up and just in the prime time, or ready for the big shine of Hollywood. I would fix the continuity errors. The one that really stood out to me is the scene where the brothers are fighting and they fall down the steps and Peter's got a gray shirt on for a moment. But also towards the end of the movie, there is the scene at the airport where it is clearly nighttime in one scene and it's pouring the rain, and then the next moment we see the airstrip, it's now dusk and everything's dry. So little things could really have made this movie just ever so slightly better, but it's still got a 5 star for me. I'm sure that will shock absolutely no one. This movie, I had no expectations, but it did not disappoint me. What about you?
Yeah, I gave it a 2 for a lot of reasons that I talked about already. Cop movies are bad, heist movies are bad. The story wasn't phenomenal because we've already seen everything that could be possibly done in the genres. I do think that the actors were perfectly fine. I thought the one-liners were funny, but it didn't do anything for me. I think that liked the movie as much as I like Shapeshifter, but it was undeniably better than Shapeshifter. But you're gonna have to spell it out for me how this came to a 5 star movie for you, because I've said a couple times throughout this podcast journey so far how I do my ratings. I rank them with like things. There's no way that a 5 star movie for you can be best of all time, one of the best movies I've ever seen, and then Double Trouble falls into that line. There's no way you think that.
I'm gonna be real with you. When I rate movies, I rate them against themselves. I don't want to put it up against. I don't want to compare Ernest to Gone with the Wind or Citizen Kane. I, what I get from that movie is how I rate it. If I had a fun time, if I enjoyed it, if it was a story that I was different or piqued my interest, then that's how I rate it. And so this movie, it's very much a vibes thing. It's not like a greatest list of I've seen 1,000 movies. Here's my rankings 1 to 1,000 based on a star level. So that I think is probably what's really confusing, not only to our listeners, to you. It probably confuses Letterboxd as well, because I've got some movies that are just trash that I've rated fives just because at the time that I watched it, I fucking loved it. I think Fargo. I think I rated it. What did I rate that as? Like a 3.5. So I mean, there are But if I'm comparing the two, obviously Fargo's the better movie in terms of any metric that you want to rate it against. But for me, a five is a five because it was a fun time. I enjoyed it. No complaints from me. If that makes sense, I don't know if that helped illuminate my decision making.
Yeah, I mean, I guess a little peek behind the curtain here. I was working on a spreadsheet for this podcast. That way we can keep track of any sort of requests that we get in our comments, whether that's through TikTok or here on YouTube. Drop us a comment so we can watch a movie, or keeping track of the movies that we have watched and what we rated and what the average score was and all those things. You watched this movie before I did. I saw your score on Letterboxd and went, "Oh my god, okay." And then had to pretend like I didn't know you were going to say five the entire time that we were doing this podcast. So I guess in some aspects you did illuminate it and clear it up a little bit. I think that's insane, but fine.
We are very much the David and Peter when it comes to this shit. The yin to my yang. And that, honestly, that'll set it up perfectly. I have a question for you. If we were to recreate this movie, who would the cop be and who would the criminal be? And more importantly, who could grow the most impressive mullet?
So I think by default, you could probably grow the more impressive mullet. I have a autism thing that I don't like it when hair is touching my ears. So that's going to be an automatic out for me, I think. Unless it's a skullet. I could probably do a skullet and be fine. But like the full mullet thing, I don't think I could do it. So you probably by default. And then I hate that you put me in a position where I have to choose whether I'm a criminal or a cop, because honestly, I think that both would be reprehensible. But if I had to pick one based on like a pure chaos versus order strategy, I think I would have to be the cop.
Yeah, that's kind of my thinking. I think you would be more of the cop because of the way your brain is wired. I think you have to have a reason for how things work. In me, it's just like, well, fuck, that's the way it's supposed to be. Like, you know what I mean? And as far as a mullet
Shit, I guess
goes,
we're making triangles now.
shit, guess it works. Um, as far as a mullet thing, during COVID, remember I grew that little skullet that I had and dyed my hair blonde. So um, maybe we can use that photo at some point. I'll send it to you so you can put that in this video. Uh, if you love this movie, there are. I'm going to give you two movies that you should watch now that you've seen Double Trouble. Maybe this was your first time, or maybe you love it like I do. I don't know. But if you could not get enough of the Barbarian Brothers, you can see them in a movie that is directed by the same director who created this, John Paragon. It's called Twin Sitters. Sitters. Sorry, my Appalachian twang got in the way. Came out in 1994, so 2 years later, and it is widely considered the masterpiece of the Barbarian Brothers filmography. They only did 4 movies, so I think we need to take a month and just go through the whole catalog. And then Double Impact, which came out in 1991. It's about twin brothers that are separated at birth, or separated when their parents are murdered, and they reunite to avenge their parents' deaths. And the twins are played by one actor. He's a personal favorite of yours, Jean-Claude Van Damme.
Guess I'll be skipping that one then.
So again, you can stream Double Trouble on Tubi. I highly recommend it. Austin probably won't recommend it. But yeah, I'm going to toss it back to you to kind of let us know what we're going to be watching next week.
If anybody has ever seen the first episode we ever dropped of this series, we did our 6 grandfathers favorite movies. And especially compared to your list, I feel like someone could definitely look at mine and say that it's a little pretentious. There aren't a lot of fun movies on it. But I'm changing that here because we're going to watch the first movie in my favorite film franchise of all time on Peacock, The Fast and the Furious. Cannot help myself. I love these stupid movies. They're not good movies. Full stop. They're not good movies, but I love them. They're so near and dear to me. And Peacock doesn't have all 10, which is unfortunate for me. But I'm going to be watching the first one, and if we get good reviews on it, if that video does well, and maybe we just run down the line of all of them, because on Peacock right now there's The Fast and the Furious, Too Fast, Too Furious, Tokyo Drift, and then Fast 10 for some reason. Join us next week as we're watching The Fast and Furious on Peacock. Follow us on all socials at Sad Boy Cinema, YouTube, Twitter, TikTok, and the newly added Facebook page that we started. Also, follow our individual Letterboxd accounts. I'm going to put our handles above our head here. Before I send us out of here, do you have anything?
Math isn't real. It's just a lie based upon the facts of one person, and as the person who invented math, don't know who it was, but we've just been living our life on the assumption that that guy was right or that woman was right, but I'm assuming it was a guy because just the history of the planet. But gotta pump the brakes on math here.
That's going to do it for me. That's going to do it for AJ. Be kind. Tell somebody you love them. See you in the next one. Might be time to look into a new place.